Hi, Tal.
Hi, Siobhan.
Thank you for joining me for an episode of the Polylogues series.
Thank you for inviting me.
I thought maybe the best place to start would be to ask you how you got interested in computer science. How did you become a computer scientist yourself?
I have two parents. I have a father who's a computer scientist and a mother who's a lawyer. So, of course, I applied to law school and to computer science. And I got into both, and I debated and debated. And to this day, I cannot tell you what was the determining factor that made me choose this. I can tell you that my sister chose the other way, and she's a professor of law. So, two girls, two different decisions. I do not regret my decision for a moment.
And you've also collaborated with your dad, is that right?
Yes, but only on a single paper. Unfortunately, I wish I had done it more. That would have been a joy. He was also my teacher at the Hebrew University, which was another wonderful thing. He was a phenomenal teacher. And I'm not saying that just because I'm his daughter. He has proof with all kinds of student awards and things like that. So it's something that I can share with him that I think is very unique for a child to have such an experience with a parent. And I'm very happy about it. And also, not just that he taught me in those specific classes, but that I can appreciate the work that he's done, the research that he's done, and how fundamental and impactful it has been on all our lives, not just mine, but the things that he has done. Just one simple example, and there are many, many, many more. Primality testing, we need primes in order to enable cryptography. So without his algorithm, which is basically what's used everywhere, or most places, we wouldn't be able to enable secure communication and so on. So really a huge impact on everyone's life. And my sister maybe can understand it at some level, but I can understand it at another level and really see all the beauty of all his great ideas that he had.
And what was his name? I don't know if you mentioned his name.
His name is Michael Rabin. That's how he says his name, but in Hebrew it's Tal Rabin.
Right. So to get down to some sort of fundamental questions, just to see where it leads us, like how would you define computing or computer science? What is computable?
There's the obvious definition, right? Anything that can be computed by a Turing machine. That would be the sort of a basic definition. But I think that now we're in a very, very interesting time with all these things that are happening in AI. Of course, they're still being computed by a machine, but I think we're reaching places which I'm not sure we thought that machines could do, that the algorithms would be sophisticated enough to really achieve some goals. Where it will lead, whether computers will take over humans, whether we will think that interacting with a computer, we're like interacting with our best friend, I don't know. But I think that it's bringing us to a place where it's not the boring definition of what is computed is what can be computed by a Turing machine, but it's something a little bit more of what it's offering back to us, I think.
Right. It's a little more ineffable.
A little bit more?
Ineffable, like kind of, it's almost an intangible. It's just starting to get at that essence of what,
Yes.
To be human, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're just at the beginning of that journey, and I think it's going to be a fascinating one. It is already fascinating.
Yeah. And then looking back on the field, how do you tell the story? What do you see as the arc of cryptography?
So first of all, I think that cryptography has a fascinating history. Computer science, of course, in general, are very, very new. But cryptography has existed since prehistoric times. There were ciphers, maybe the hieroglyphics are ciphers, who knows, Caesar cipher and so on. And there were things that had happened all along over time. And of course, the enigma. But then in 1976, there was really a jump. There are things, sometimes research progresses, one block built on top of the other, but sometimes there's a jump which really causes a shift in everything. And that was the paper of Diffie and Hellman, which basically ushered in modern day cryptography. And that really was a meaningful change, because cryptography before this idea of ideas of Diffie and Hellman required parties, in order to have private communication, required people to meet in private. Maybe for us to talk on the phone, maybe for us to meet in a secret room and exchange some keying material, some secret data. And then from there on, we could continue to communicate in a secret way, even if we were far apart. But public key cryptography enabled us to agree on secret keying material when we are far apart, when people can be listening to our communications. This is mind-boggling. You would think, how could this happen? How can two people who are being listened to by a third party share some secret? And first of all, it was amazing that such a thing could happen. But of course, it created a huge opportunity, because now secret communication could really happen between two people, even if they had never met. And this was, of course, very important and opened a door into this area, which is called modern day cryptography. And of course, it's been a flourishing field since then. And the nice thing about it is that it offers things that we need, like the secrecy when we're communicating between each other, between two people, and we need authentication to know that I'm speaking to you and you know you're speaking to me, and more of these fundamental primitives. But in fact, it since has gone to unimaginable things that you can do. For example, multi-party computation, which was introduced in the beginning of the 1980s, created a whole area where it's not just a secret communication between two people, but it's a group of people being able to compute functions on secret inputs, but still learn the output. For example, a simple question. 10 people are together and they want to know the average salary. Maybe to figure out, they want to know if they're being discriminated against. So, but nobody wants to reveal their own salary. But they can engage in a computation that will output just the average of the salaries. And that's an amazing tool. And in fact, something that is true about cryptography in general is that things are developed mostly in the sort of academic realm, and it takes time until they're adopted by the general community and really utilized. RSA was designed in 1976. Really widespread adoption did not happen till much later. And it happens with many things like that. And sometimes the necessity from the real world brings on the adoption. And why did I mention that? Because, for example, for multi-party computation, beautiful theory, and a lot of algorithms that really try to make it practical, that you can use it. But then do people use it? Not necessarily. But now, with privacy legislation, these things are going to become critical. Because what does privacy legislation tell an organization? You cannot share your data. And sometimes you want to utilize this data, in fact, for the benefit of the community. But for the privacy of the individual, the organization's told that they cannot. But two hospitals want to collaborate and gain some meaningful information from the data. So now, these multi-party computations, I think, are going to get a huge boost and really are going to start to be utilized, because privacy regulation is pushing this forward and requiring this. So I think this, and it's happened many times over the history of cryptography, that things at the beginning were created and only later really moved into mainstream.
So I mean, I guess that's becoming more and more, or we're seeing that right now with COVID. We have all this data on our mobile phones, and there's various ways that, you know, we want to be tracking people and revealing where they are, how they've tested. And so that may push the, you know, the privacy encryption applications forward, do you think?
Contact tracing is a very interesting example. I don't know what to say whether people will use it or not. I think that what we've also seen is that we're not good predictors of what bandwagon people want to join and which ones they don't want to join. So I really can't say. We can see for contact tracing so far that it really has not caught on, though of course it would be a wonderful tool.
Right.
And use is low, and with low use, the quality of the contact tracing is greatly diminished. So I don't know, but it definitely is bringing things to the attention of people. And I think, okay, maybe not contact tracing, but then when some later multi-party computation, privacy-preserving computation comes along, people will have already heard something in the past, maybe in relation to contact tracing. Maybe it won't be so foreign, and maybe it could help other things in the future. Whether contact tracing will take off or not, very hard to say.
Right. Yeah.
You know, why do CryptoKitties take on, start being something, and other things just have no traction whatsoever?
Yeah, right. What advancement did you witness over the course of your career that was most surprising or startling?
Well, you have to think that modern day crypto started in 76 and I started studying in 83, or let's say in 86, I started my master's already. So most of the advancement of crypto, all the amazing things have happened during my time. But things that, of course, I love are the things that relate more to my specific research. And that's an indication of why I also chose them, because I thought they'd be interesting. So multi-party computations, of course, was an advancement that I think was surprising and exciting and really created a host of extremely interesting problems. So that's one thing. But of course, the field has gone through the introduction of zero knowledge. That's an unbelievable concept. Pseudorandom number generators, pseudorandom functions, I can't even, semantic security. All these things are all amazing things that build up these fields. But the truth is, I think of cryptography, I'm sure every researcher thinks that of their own area, but I think that there are endless interesting problems, and it continuously evolves. And I think that there's just a lot of exciting things to do. And just to give the latest example, which of course has taken the world by storm, not just the area of cryptography as a research area, is cryptocurrencies, right? This is built on designs of crypto primitives, and it's I don't know how many billion-dollar industry, which is just unbelievable. So I think that cryptography, because its strong connection to our digital life, has a lot of impact, you know, maybe more than complexity. Not that I want to badmouth complexity, but just saying that is something. So I think that it's an area that has had many exciting results and continues to have many exciting results. Even the past 10 years have brought forward fully homomorphic encryption and obfuscation, two things that were developed by people in my group at IBM. And these things also generated a lot of excitement, a lot of work. Even in the past few months, there have been yet additional breakthrough results connected to these things. So I think it's an extremely dynamic field, and a lot of wonderful things happen.
Mm-hmm. So what would you consider your own most important contribution? I mean, I'm sure there have been hard, again, probably to single one thing out, but.
Well, it's always easy to single one out because it's not that you love your first child more than your second child, but your first result is different. I say your first child as opposed to your second because I have two daughters, and in case they hear this interview, I don't want them to think that the first is loved more than the second. But my first result, I think, will always be my most cherished result.
Right. And what was the technical gist of it?
So as I told you, there was this area that had come up of multi-party computations. The first paper, which was, there were two concurrent ones, Ben-Or, Goldwasser, and Wigderson, and Schaumker, and Damgard. They had two similar results that said that in an information theoretic setting, the theorem was you can compute any functions with n parties, where at most a third of the parties are behaving, could be misbehaving, might be acting in a faulty manner. And the question that was left open was whether we could achieve a higher fault tolerance, whether we could go to a half. It was clear that half would be a lower bound, but whether we could do it even if just below a majority, that there's an honest majority, that the faulty parties are less than half, whether we could still provide the same theorem, that any function can be computed with n parties where there's only an honest majority. And that was the result of the work.
Very nice. And I mean, looking ahead, what do you find most fascinating or worrisome? I mean, where do you think things are going?
One thing that I'm very curious to know, but I don't know if things are going there, but this is something that I would love to know before I die, whether we can factor on a regular machine, not on a quantum machine. So this is something that is just curiosity. I'm not doing anything to advance this, but I would love to know. But this, of course, brings into discussion the issue of quantum computers. Because, of course, if we have quantum computers, then all our conventional encryption will be broken because they rely on factoring in discrete log, which can be solved easily by a quantum computer. And that is why the field, in fact, is already actively seeking designs that are secure, even if a quantum computer exists. And this is something that I think is very important and has to be, efforts have to be invested in. And luckily, this is happening. There are competitions for secure schemes. But who knows, maybe we won't have a real quantum computer anytime soon to break any practical crypto system that has a reasonable size key. I don't know. But I think that these are important things to look at, and I think the field is looking at it. And I think that this sort of a challenge that might be coming up soon and needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, of course, because once it happens, you're stuck. And I think that somehow the field on its own has this really good dynamic that things come up and new techniques and ideas and problems continuously keep arising. And I think for now, we're still on a good trend. And the good thing about cryptography is also, why do all the new problems come about? Because it really has a role to play in actual life, in what things need to be solved, problems that are coming. For example, as I said, HIPAA. By chance, we already had multi-party computations, but all these privacy legislation, they call for the need for privacy-preserving computations. So, but they bring in, so there's the general problem, say, okay, I need multi-party privacy-preserving computations, but then they bring all kinds of interesting models, challenges, and so on. So really what's good in the field is that it all the time is has a stream coming in from real life to try and give additional things that can be addressed in the field. So in fact, we have in cryptography what we call computational assumptions. And every crypto that we have, bar the one-time pad, there is some computational assumption that we assume that makes the crypto system secure. If that assumption is broken, then the system will be broken and there will be no security. The issue is that if we take a really big number, 2048-bit number, that's huge. We have the algorithm, but it really takes a long, long time to compute this. So this is what it means that there is a computational assumption. Then in fact, we know how to, but it really takes us a long time. So we make things big enough. I won't use 15 for my crypto system because it's small. I'll use, as I said, a 2048-bit key. And then it would take a long time to factor it. But quantum computers, as I said, can compute this in polynomial time. What we call computable efficiently is polynomial time, and the other, we say, it's exponential time. So quantum computers do have a polynomial time algorithm for factoring. And the way that it's done, by the way, just specifically about crypto, I had spoken before about primality testing. So the way that we get to these very, very long composites is that we choose 2 prime numbers and we multiply them, really big prime numbers, and we multiply them. And what I had said before about primality testing, we need to know that the 2 numbers that we chose are actually prime. So there is some randomized algorithm that tells us with very high probability, this number is a prime. And you use 2 like that, multiply them, you get your big composite, and now it's difficult to do the factor.
Right. And just to get to the basics of it, so it's a kind of lock and key relationship. Like how does that allow for encryption then?
Okay, so a RSA, which uses such a big composite, which is a product of 2 primes, but now let's just call it N. And what we know is that it's a product of 2 primes. It has a public key portion, which is N. And then it has a private key portion. And what's the private key? It's exactly those 2 composites. So if I create my public key, I take these 2 large primes, I multiply them, and I publish N. And I publish another number. It can be the number 3, and we'll call it E. Okay, E equals 3. It could be some other number, but for simplicity, let's call it E. And now, and this goes back to Diffie and Hellman, this was their great idea, that I can locally publish something and keep something local, but now you can already encrypt using my public key, using the 3 and the N. You can compute some function of the message that you want to send me and these 2 values. And then you send it back to me. Now I have the private key, the 2 prime factors of this N. And using them with another function, I can decrypt. So this is why it's very important that somebody who just hears my N cannot find the 2 prime factors, because those 2 help you decrypt. So this is a private key, public key, and the public key, in fact, can be seen by anyone, but already enables you to send me a message without anybody being able to read it, anybody who does not have the secret key. And I, who have the prime factorization, I can read the message.
Got it. Right. Thank you. Now you said that you'd like to know about factorization before you die, but that you're not working on it currently. What are you working on currently yourself?
So currently, I am in a foundation which is called Algorand, which is associated to a cryptocurrency called Algo. And the consensus protocol of Algorand was designed by Silvio Micali and introduced a new model, which is a model that says in these multi-party computation settings, it says every party only speaks once and then it disappears. In all our previous designs, we always said, okay, we have n parties, and then we engage in a long protocol. I speak, you speak, they speak, I speak again, and so on. But now this new model says you can only speak once. So the question is, in this new model, where there is this very hard restriction that you can only speak once and then you disappear, can you still achieve the multi-party computation results that we had in our previous model, where people could speak as many times as they want? So it's now combining my new job with my old love, and it's really nice. And in fact, we're working on a paper which we hope will soon be published that shows that you in fact can do many of these multi-party computations only also in this model, which we call YOSO, which is you only speak once.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing it. Well, maybe that's a good note to end on.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot.
It's been wonderful speaking to you.